Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show, a member of the Pod Bros Podcast Network. Go to podbros.com. Find another podcast you might enjoy because, shit's entertaining. You want to listen to it, but, you really need to be just listening to us from there. And don't forget to go to bigjujitsu.com, buy a t-shirt, buy a patch, click Amazon banner at the top, and support us. Make sure I eat. Make sure my wife doesn't kill me. So I'm Rob the Lord Humongous, and today I'm joined by Mr. Jeff Shaw. I wanted to get him and Trevor on from the Cageside Concussioncast show on the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. But hey, you know what? I just got Jeff, and I'm cool with that because I've never just talked to you one-on-one, man.
I appreciate you having me on, and you've had Trevor on twice, and so I'm just trying to catch up to Trevor as I am in all things with life. So I have to drink about 9 beers during this podcast just to catch up to the 13 I'm sure Trevor has had them.
Oh, yeah. What was it? You said he checked in at, was it Brugaloo? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I'm not even sure what it really is, but I saw on his Facebook he's going to something called Brugaloo, which I can only assume is something that involves both beer and 70s dancing, which both the things Trevor is aficionado of. So. Oh,
he loves his dancing and he loves his drinking. That's for sure. But what man doesn't?
Yeah, they go great together. It's like peanut butter and chocolate or stripes and plaid.
Stripes and plaid. Yeah.
I'm a very fashionable man, Rob. I should have warned you.
Me either, man. I wear white shoes all year round. So, that's like the hugest fashion faux pas, I think. I'm not sure. So when do you go back to white shoes after Labor Day? Or is it just reset?
It's a deep question. I think, honestly, you can just call yourself fashion forward. And I think that makes up for everything.
Oh, shit. Well, learned something new today. So you guys have been doing the Concussion Cast for, let me say, a good while now. Starting out strong and still hitting it pretty fucking hard, too.
It started from the bottom, now slightly off the bottom. But we've been doing it for about 6 months. And in all seriousness, I don't think we were really prepared for the response that we've been getting, which is cool. I would have been happy if it were just me, five of my nerdy friends, and one other guy. But, because we do it for fun, we do it for the community, and we as long as I'm entertaining Trevor and Trevor's entertaining me, I figure it's good. So, but it's always nice that other people enjoy the show too.
Oh, absolutely. When I saw that, Trevor, I think we were talking, he's like, yeah, we're doing a podcast. I'm like, holy shit, that's awesome. If there's one guy who needs to be on the air, it's definitely you. Then that's how I learned about you. And I was like, dude, you're the perfect yin to his yang in the of on-air personalities.
Yeah, we're good buds, and it's probably because we're photo negatives of each other, in a lot of ways. Where, and it's great, Trevor and I are the classic story of a friendship forged through combat sports, and like you said, I think a lot of times when you're hanging out with somebody that it has a different perspective from you, enjoys different things than you do, sometimes that can be gears grinding. But with me and Trevor, it's more like someone sang the song Dreamweaver, and we both walk toward the light together. So, but yeah, seriously, Trevor's an awesome dude, and I have a blast with him, and he's really fun to do the show with, especially because he knows, one of the things that I think, and I'm sure that you would agree from your own podcasting experiences, it's cool to have somebody whose knowledge base expands beyond yours. And I'm an old man with a lot of concussions, so the whole face punching thing, to call my striking knowledge rudimentary would be an insult to rudimentary things. But Trevor actually knows a lot about that stuff, and his coaching is really well respected. And he's a goofy dude who has a great sense of humor. So sometimes people take the sort of Trevor Hayes persona as, oh, this dude's kind of silly, and he is silly, but the knowledge is real, man. And people that know the game really respect that.
Yeah, what's funny is he's just a guy who likes to have fun. It isn't like his goofiness translates into unprofessional at all, because it's pretty obvious with his teaching. He's come along really quickly from the kid that came into my Taekwondo. Well, let's back that up. The guy who I got in trouble with at bowling class in college to a guy who's one of the top Muay Thai trainers in North Carolina.
Yeah, I'll tell the listeners a deeply held secret about Trevor. Trevor Hayes is very responsible. And, we do things in fight sports, and, I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is not Japanese jiu-jitsu. Japanese jiu-jitsu people show up on time. But the thing is, Trevor Hayes shows up early to stuff. He shows up ready. He shows up ready to train. He shows up ready to teach. He shows up ready to do the show, and he knows his stuff. And he likes to have fun, which I think personally, I've seen a bunch of his classes, and I think that the students really appreciate that, right? Because there's some people that have the knowledge, but they're kind of dry, kind of stick in the mud guys. Like, we're going to do this by the book. 1, 2, 3. Did I just see you goofing off over there? And people like to have fun, right? Like, if you're passionate about martial arts, you spend a lot of time doing it, right? Like, most of us, if you train 5 or 6 days a week, and sometimes twice a day, like when I was training most intensely, I would train 20, 25 hours a week. I'm very lucky because of the jobs that I've had have allowed me to do that. But that's a big chunk of your life, right? And so these are your friends in the gym. That is kind of your social time too, even though it's your training time. And so while you're trying to kill each other, you're like, hey, how's the family? Hey, what and so I think Trevor in his classes strikes a really good balance of staying on task and teaching people really vital information while at the same time making it fun.
Which is very important. So, I mean, I know we've talked a good, way more than I wanted to about Trevor, as much as I like him, but this show's about you, Jeff. So I want to know, how did you get started? What caused you to get into martial arts?
So I have a sort of half of my story is totally standard and half of my story is totally non-standard.
Right.
Like most folks, I saw Hoist in the early UFCs. I was like, hey, I really want to try that. But life got in the way, and I actually wrestled in high school a little bit, but I had a serious back injury in high school, so I had to quit. And so from then, I didn't do martial arts until I moved to Okinawa. And when I was in Okinawa, I picked up Okinawan-style karate, goju-ryu, which was really fun, and I enjoyed a lot. But I was doing it more as a cultural practice than an actual self-defense art, which is not to say it's not badass, because it is. But I was in it more for I want to understand the Okinawan culture. I want to understand this martial art that is rooted in their people's history. And so I got started training. In the back of my mind was always Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because of Hoist and the early UFCs, and I had never landed in a place where it would be conducive, my life would be conducive to me doing that. So I ended up moving to Durham, North Carolina. And just by luck and happenstance, the first gym that I tried out was a Hoist Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gym where my instructor, Seth Champ, was teaching. And I immediately loved it. I brought 2 friends to class with me that night because I didn't want to go to this place by myself. At the time, it was a much smaller gym than it is now. And Cageside, Triangle Jiu-Jitsu, the school that I attend, and Cageside Fight Company have always been not always, but have for the last many years been housed in the same building, which was kind of cool for me as someone that was interested in mixed martial arts and wanted to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But I brought 2 friends. I was like, hey, guys, you want to go with me? And these were dudes who were, tough dudes who had trained martial arts, but they were both like, yeah, the whole it was a pretty serious fight gym at that time. And while I fell in love with it instantly, my friends didn't come back. And I like to say, so what was really cool about it, and I think, so my experience is half standard because like a lot of guys, I saw Hoist. I was like, wow, this skinny Brazilian just beat up these monstrous dudes. I want to learn to do that. But it's sort of non-standard because I waited a while, and because when I started training, your listeners can't see me, but I'm a nerdy old vegan. When I walked into the gym, I was 36 years old. I'm about 5'6". I'm about 145 pounds, and I'm very smiley and wear thick glasses. And at the time, the cats that were training, there were 10 to 15 regular guys training, and all of them were stone killers. Just some of the toughest dudes, really nice people, most of them, but bad dudes. And there was one other white belt, Kim Rice, who started a couple months before I did. And Kim, who, by the way, just won a silver medal at the Abu Dhabi Combat Club, so that tells you where she went. But basically me and Kim just got our ass kicked every day for months. And so it was Seth, super badass purple belt, Ryan, big beastly monster, soon to be purple belt, Dewan Owens, who is super successful professional MMA fighter, all these dudes that are really awesome, really technical, but also physical beasts that will whoop your ass. And then at the bottom, it's me and Kim. And Kim is a super athlete, a self-made super athlete, which is super worthy of respect. And so basically it would be like, get your ass kicked, get your ass kicked, get your ass kicked, get your ass kicked. Oh shit, there's one other white belt. Let's go at each other really hard because we have no chance against anyone else. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I got beat up a lot. I was always exhausted. It was frustrating because jiu-jitsu was really tough to learn, and I loved every fucking second of it. And so that's sort of how I got into it. And I was really lucky because like Seth, my instructor, who is a Hoist Gracie black belt now, everybody, it's really important to find the school that's your home, because like there's a lot of great instructors that I've seen, like, and people that could be good students, and there's just not a match there. There's just not like a fit, and luckily with me, I like Seth's instruction and teaching style really resonated with me right away. And so I super lucked out. It's a pretty rare story that the first school that you luck into happens to be like the one that fits you perfectly, but that's what happened to me.
Yeah, it's oh, got a little echo there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's all good. Might have to switch up to the headphones.
Cool, I'll do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
That's the good thing about not being live is that I can do the editing afterwards.
Yeah, right. I mean, one of the shitty things about live radio, I mean, I love doing the live radio show, but it's also like if something goes wrong, well, fuck.
Yeah, when I was on your show, I was like, don't say a bad word, don't say a bad word, don't say a bad word. And I was like, gosh darn it. Yeah,
no, right. For my day job, I've been doing sort of like communications work and public relations, being the spokesperson for a nonprofit organization for about 15 or 20 years. And I shit you not, the last thing I tell myself before I do any television or radio interview is don't say fuck, don't say fuck, don't say fuck. And I haven't said fuck yet. I mean, on the air. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It's going to be good times. But yeah, and like we've only had one dude drop the F-bomb on the air, CJ Murdoch, live from Brazil. Love CJ. And he did it like right at the end of the show too, where he was like, I was like, do you have anybody you want to thank, CJ? And he's like, yeah, my parents. I told them I wanted to be a fighter, and they were like, you're fucking crazy. Like, I was like, can't say that. Yeah, but nobody called the FCC, so.
Oh, I'd really hope not. I mean, unless you're like Howard Sterning it every day on the air, then.
Yeah, and it was cool. He apologized, and it's like, and plus it's a fighting podcast, right? It's a podcast about fighting. You have to sort of, if coarse language is our worst concern, then we're doing all right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think the only person who really would be offended by something like that who's in the combat sports game might be Sage Northcutt.
Yeah. And isn't he like 13 years old? Because eventually when he starts to shave, he'll realize that grown men say fuck. Don't beat me up, Sage.
Well, it was funny because right before I got on, I was browsing through Reddit, of course, because I'm a huge nerd. But there was a picture of him. Like somebody posted it up, it's like pray for Sage, like hashtag pray for Sage or something. It was him like at the hospital battling MRSA, and he has like this huge smile on his face. And somebody said this guy's like the Ned Flanders of MMA.
Yeah. Idly hodly, neighbor, parts of me are falling off due to MRSA.
Yeah. Oh my God. But more power to him. He's doing what he loves. But I think he's the only person in combat sports who would be like, we can't say that. That's unprofessional.
Oh man. Well, God love him. I mean, that's what I love about the combat sports. Honestly, it challenges your preconceptions, right? Because there are folks like that take part in it, and there are folks like me who's like on one side of the political spectrum and vegan-y and human rights-y and stuff like that, and then there's other folks that couldn't care less about politics. Folks that are, and we're all sort of one big happy choke and punch each other family. By and large, like any family, there's internal fights, but what's kind of cool about it is, I mean, Trevor always talks about this, and the two of us would not have met, be it not for combat sports, and I love that guy now. I'd run through a wall for him, and similar to like all manner of cats at my gym or in the North Carolina jiu-jitsu scene, that there's awesome people that it's sort of like half a support group and half the Mos Eisley Cantina from Star Wars, where it's like, man, all you dudes are and like, I'm a person that really likes, extreme and diverse life experiences.
Yeah.
I like experiences that you can't get anywhere else, right? And like in an MMA gym or jiu-jitsu gym, you know, you're going to meet folks that you would never meet otherwise. Like, and it's funny because like people think about the quirky folks that are famous in the scene, like people like Kurt Osiander, who's this free spirit that makes these hilarious profane videos and is a total badass. But like, there's a bunch of dudes like that are not famous. They're just like dudes that have incredible stories in every martial arts gym, and that's why. I mean, that's why I think it's cool that you do your podcast and why we want to do ours. Is there's so many great stories out there that just need telling.
No, I agree with that, because that's like one reason we started it, was just because how many people are you not going to meet that aren't going to be like, you know, the Keenan Corneliuses or the Meow Brothers or the Andre Galvalos? Like, they get all the exposure. Like, what about, you know, the dude that works 40 hours a week and still trains full time and goes to tournaments and stuff? Like, that's originally where it went with. We got some other stuff coming up too, so we're trying to. Maybe, I know it's getting crazy.
Exciting.
Yeah, it's kind of scary too. So, like, when you guys decided to do the podcast, I want to see if it's kind of like a shared experience of what I had. So, like, the first couple months, right? I told my wife, I was like, we're going to try a podcast. She's like, cool, whatever. And then I was like, maybe I don't want to tell people I do a podcast. It's kind of embarrassing. Now it's like full force, like, hey, my name's Rob. I do a podcast. Listen to my fucking podcast, please. Like, have you guys like experienced some like weird growth or like some growing pains or?
Yeah, no, like I've had a similar experience, and sort of the weird growing pains thing. Like, I would divide it into two categories. The sort of growing pains stuff where it's like, okay, we intended this to be something that all of our friends could listen to and be like, oh, who did well at this tournament? Oh, I didn't know that Dewan used to break dance. I know that guy. And it started out like that, but suddenly we had people listening to us that we didn't know, which is the most bizarre experience for me. And so, like, one example, and I'll give one example from me and one example from Trevor. So I was training at a friend's gym that is an MMA gym, and I hadn't trained there before. Elevate MMA. What's up, everybody? And, you know, great classes, cool folks, was talking to them, and somebody was coming in for the kickboxing class, and I, you know, I talked with her for a while, and she's like, hey, you know, this is my name. I'm like, oh, I'm Jeff. And she's like, wait, are you Jeff Shaw? And I'm like, how did you know that? And she's like, I listen to the podcast. And I'm like, oh my God. And it was great. It was super cool and flattering to know that, like, you know, people are out there listening. And so that's kind of cool. I'll tell you the Trevor experience, and I'll tell a growing pain story. So this is pretty funny. So the way, for those of you that don't know, the Cageside Concussioncast broadcasts live on WHUPFM.org. It's a local community radio station. And I'm really grateful to those folks, because me and Trevor had wanted to do a podcast for a long time, but we didn't want to learn how to do it, and we didn't want to invest the money into the equipment. And so one of my friends from school said, hey, you guys should come to a show on our station, and it'll automatically upload as a podcast, which is great. It's seamless, and it's super cool. So this station grew a little bit along with us, and we were a pretty popular show. And so, you know, and for a while at least, and we may still be, for a long time, we were the most popular show on the station, which no one expected at all. Everyone was like, we have the great music, and we have these social issue shows, and we have the show about like writers that are local. And then we get these martial arts weirdos, and like, we just need to fill airtime. So we let the weirdos talk about face punching and pajama wrestling. But then the ratings turned out sweet, and we were like the most popular show, which no one expected. And I don't know if that's still true, but it was for quite a long time. And so Trevor was getting coffee at the local Cup of Joe, and the local Alternative Weekly had done a story about the radio station. And Trevor was like, ah, man, I'm bummed. They don't mention our show at all. That's really too bad. They mentioned this other show instead. And not knowing that the barista knew our show,
yeah,
he was saying this. And the barista says, yes, but those other shows matter.
Holy shit.
And Trevor's like, oh. Like,
wow.
Hey, I know it was hard. As Dave Chappelle would say in the Charlie Murphy sketches, cold-blooded.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, but you know, I like Trevor was bummed, but I laughed at that because it's like, you know, it's when you do a niche activity, you can't really expect other people that don't do it to give a shit about it.
Exactly.
you know, and I don't, and that's fine. You know, I don't like, you know, I don't square dance. I don't hate on square dancing, but people are super fired up about it, and I wouldn't expect them to. I wouldn't listen to a square dance podcast, and I wouldn't expect them to listen to my podcast unless they punch themselves in the face while square dancing. Which, you know, maybe some of them do. I don't know.
I mean, there could be an open market for that, honestly.
Yeah, maybe that'll be the next podcast. You and I can do that one together.
Oh shit, I love that. Well, this is the Rob and Jeff Square Dance Fight Show.
We're really micro targeting this. It's gonna be sweet.
Oh, we have the biggest. It will be like the weirdest ratio. Like we have the largest ratio of practitioners to listeners. All 500 of them.
Yeah, it's a pretty small Venn diagram, but if we can get enough, I'm with it. I'm with it.
Oh man, but yeah, just growing pain stuff is it's interesting. Like the same thing. It's kind of at the beginning. It was like everybody in the gym listen to my podcast, and if you're my friend, listen to my podcast. And then it's like now I'm getting messages on Facebook from people I've never even met. Like, hey, could you talk about this on the show? I'm like, who are you?
Yeah, no, I get spam emails now from cats that have gyms in California and stuff, and I'm just like, I don't, and it's flattering, right? Because you know they heard about you from somewhere, but at the same time, it's kind of strange. And what's kind of like what I would prefer, I guess, my vision for the show. Nice. But like, I mean, yeah, right. I'm very important. You know who I am. I have a vision. But like, what I want this show to be is telling the stories of the grassroots MMA scene in North Carolina and beyond, and like people that are competing in a very local environment. And of course, we're going to talk about national stuff too, because folks compete at national and international tournaments. But like, I don't have aspirations for it to be like, you know, I don't have. It doesn't have to be a growth industry for me. I want to like one of the cool things about having a podcast for me, and I want to see if you agree with this, is honestly, I just want to interview people that I want to talk to.
Yeah.
So,
That's
and I figure if I find them interesting, then other people will too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I never the intent for like our podcast too wasn't me and Sean sat down. We're like, let's make money. Let's do a podcast. Like that was never.
Yeah.
He's kind of like, I've got an opinion. He's like, well, I have an opinion too. And I'm like, fuck it, let's have a podcast. And that's how it started. And then after we were done talking, we're like, who wants to be on the podcast? And then it just went from there.
And now you're raking in that sweet, sweet podcast money with your Scrooge McDuck bin over in Germany.
Yeah, right. Well, I was able to buy like a few beers with it, so we're doing pretty good.
I have a Lamborghini that says vegan and a personalized license plate, and I play Cristal Pong now.
Oh,
it's great.
Dang. I would do something like super off the wall, like, I don't know, like have Michelangelo's David as like a fountain centerpiece in the front of my house.
That'd be so sweet with like maybe a chocolate fountain coming out.
Oh yeah,
with strawberries in it.
That'd be even better. Like why not just destroy a timeless masterpiece with a dessert? I think that's a great idea.
You know, in all seriousness, if I ever did get, like, I have no aspirations to get rich. You know, I like, you know, it's nice to eat and it's nice to have, you know, to be able to train all the time. But my life wouldn't be appreciably different if, you know, if I somehow got rich, if like a meteorite landed in my yard that was covered in gold and uranium or something. If I, you know, hopefully after I called the hazmat team.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't touch that.
Yeah, right. I'll probably get superpowers. But it's if I got rich, my life wouldn't appreciably change. Like the stuff, and which makes me really, really lucky in that all the stuff that I do now is stuff that I want to do. I want to train. I want to do this podcast. I only have 2 luxury items that I would buy if I got rich, and I've thought about this since I was a kid. I would buy a sauna because I like saunas, and because all my friends are fighters that cut weight and pay $10 a pop to cut weight at the local YMCA, and it would be sweet to be like, hey, want to cut weight? Come sit in my sauna, and so that would be cool. And I would have a saltwater fish tank. Which,
that is a status symbol right there, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of like, in fact, this is funny. Breaking news, Rob. You know what this is right here?
Is that a saltwater fish tank?
This is a jellyfish aquarium, and I funded it on Kickstarter and it doesn't have jellyfish yet because it's in a cardboard box, but it's a jellyfish aquarium that's like 15 feet high.
Yeah.
15 feet. Yeah. 15 inches rather high. I'm still running after the 13-hour drive today, but yeah, like a saltwater fish tank kind of status symbol, kind of like it. And you know, I would want to. It's also to inject some realness into it. It's really tough to do a saltwater fish tank ethically these days because there's so much, you know, like people steal the fish and they're endangered and it's a mess.
Oh,
but
shit, I had no idea about that.
we bust into social issues on the Big Jiu-Jitsu podcast.
That's fine. Hey, like I said, if it gets weird, it gets fucking weird. I'm cool with it. I don't know if this is a preview or backlog because this is going to air on Wednesday, but I did a 2-parter with the guys from Jiu-Jitsu After Dark.
Oh, cool.
And I talked about drinking wine coolers and going after Helen Mirren. So, I mean, it got real fucking weird on that episode of the podcast.
Legitimately, it never gets weird enough for me. So I will look forward to listening to that episode, and I will try to make it twice as weird because Trevor isn't here, so you're only getting half the weirdness.
Oh yeah, I mean, like Trevor. What's funny? Like we'll talk about Trevor again. That's cool with me. He's been nothing but professional on the show too. I'm like, be fucking weird, man. Just let loose. Just go crazy. And he's like,
okay, well you've got me after a 13-hour drive, and so this is I can get weird with you. Let's throw a weird question at me.
All right, so we talked about this is what I want to know. So when I was on your podcast, and if those of you who didn't know, I was on the Cageside Concussioncast, like a month ago or so, wasn't it?
Yeah,
like a month or two. And you talked about, and before the episode, we talked about how the Indians or the Native Americans in the Northwest refer to Sasquatch as the old man.
Yeah.
So, like, first of all, what were you doing in Washington, like that area? And second of all, like, what was that like, just talking about the old man?
It was the coolest shit ever. So I grew up in Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest, and I was a journalist to start my career. And so I worked at a small newspaper in Washington State called the North Kitsap Herald. It was in Paulsboro, Washington, and I covered a couple of Indian tribes, the Suquamish tribe and the Port Gamble S'Klallam tribe. And so these are Northwest Treaty tribes and folks that are on the East Coast. You know, so the West Coast is kind of interesting. Reservations, Indian tribes have quite a bit of reservation land and a certain amount of political power there, which they don't have elsewhere in the country. In large measure. I mean, there's tribes all over, but in the Northwest, so little history. Obviously, there was a genocide, and most of the native people east of the Mississippi were decimated. Populations were reduced by 98%. So there's not a lot of tribal populations east of the Mississippi, although there are still some. On the West Coast, the treaties that were signed were not war treaties; they were peace treaties. And so basically, the U.S. government said, "We're going to sign these treaties with you in exchange for you preserving your right to fish and hunt as you always have in your usual accustomed areas. You're going to give us this amount of land so that our folks can settle." And so I was writing about a lot of those tribes. And after a couple of years of doing that, a coalition of Indian hunting and fishing groups called the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission came to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to work for us and serving as a public relations person, a sort of information and education officer?" And so I did that for about 7 years. I worked with all the treaty tribes of Western Washington, and I worked specifically with 7 of them on natural resources, treaty rights issues, stuff like salmon recovery, elk hunting, mountain goat recovery, all kind of environmental habitat stuff. And so it was super cool. What's kind of awesome about this that folks I don't think that haven't worked with Native peoples don't understand is every Native culture is different. And yeah, there's commonalities, but there's more than 400, maybe 500 different Native identities that existed in the United States or in North America at one point. And so even though I worked with all these tribes that are geographically really concentrated in one area, and they share mostly a common language, which is called Coast Salish or Lushootseed, cultures were very different, or at least distinct. Like they shared common elements. A lot of them are salmon fishing people. A lot of them are elk hunting people, but there's some, the Soxhawtl tribe are mountain goat people. And you can really see the differences in the culture and language. And so it was just a fascinating, and like a lot of those people are still really good friends of mine. I had a lot of really amazing experiences out there, and the work was fun. The landscapes were beautiful, and I probably wouldn't have left if I didn't get the chance to go live in Japan for a while. So instead I did that. But yeah, like so I got to hear all these different stories, and and it was really cool to be exposed to this kind of this ancient culture that is simultaneously modern at the same time.
Damn, that is pretty cool. So what did they say about the old man then, or Sasquatch, or whatever you want to call him?
So I had this one, like I talked with a couple of folks from BC tribes, British Columbia tribes that I didn't represent, about Sasquatch, and like a lot of their remote villages, they say he just kind of walks through the village. And we didn't talk extensively about it, but I was like, yeah, you know, he walks through the village. They're like, oh yeah, we see him every so often. It's like, dang. And it was as if you and I would say, hey, there was a deer in my front yard the other day.
Holy
I mean, I don't know if they have deer in Germany. Yeah, man, it was pretty cool. And like, you know, and a lot of them, you know, and so the tribes that I worked with, I don't have a lot of knowledge about this, obviously, because I'm not a native person and I didn't grow up in that culture. But the tribes I worked with were tribes that had a cultural relationship with the salmon and the elk, and so they would tell a lot of their stories related to that, or the Makah tribe, which has a cultural relationship with gray whales. And so I didn't get a chance to work with the BC tribes too much, but I got to hear their stories, and it was great. It's always wonderful to hear, you know, hear stories from those folks, and I love hearing the stories from old timers of all cultures. So.
I would say I find it interesting that they were just so matter of fact about like about Bigfoot. It's like almost like fucking Bigfoot knocked over my trash can last night, and just you're like, yeah, about hit Bigfoot on the way home. Like, you know, can they do something about the roads? Maybe put up some fucking guardrails so Bigfoot doesn't wander into the road again. Right. Like the same problem we have with deer. Like deer were in the front yard this morning. It was kind of cool, but.
Yeah, man, it's interesting. It's interesting because like it was actually really similar to the Okinawan culture in some ways. Like, because I went and lived in Okinawa for a while, and I was actually married to an Okinawan, and so it's kind of interesting. So I think so. I said so. The paradox of it is what we call indigenous people, like people that are native people and tribal people. There's commonalities and common threads in their cultures, no matter where they live, in my experience, even though all those cultures are also super distinct. And so what's kind of interesting is in Okinawa, so Okinawans are basically the Hawaiians of Japan.
Right.
They're ethnically, culturally, and linguistically different than Japanese people. They were an independent kingdom until they got taken over in the 19th century. And their languages are mutually unintelligible. And so they have totally different like origin myths, totally different like religious beliefs and things like that. And it was kind of crazy. And this is what I would compare what like my understanding of the Sasquatch stories to is that the Okinawans are basically animist in that they believe in like the spirituality of all things. And so they have this thing that they call the kami-sama, which is like the honorable gods, and they're like nature spirits. So you've got this dugong, which is like a seagoing manatee, and it's like a nature spirit. And you have this spring, which is the home of the nature spirits. And they just sort of, it's a really fascinating set of beliefs. Because to them, like all the natural world is sacred, and you know, not to get all like, you know, I don't want to essentialize and you know, because you know, it's not something that you know, it's not my belief system, and so I don't feel super comfortable representing it like I'm an expert. But I did, you know, I think there's a lot we could learn from that.
No, I mean, learn from all sorts of different people is probably. It's just like jujitsu. Like you can learn from all sorts of different people. It doesn't have to be, you know, one group you feel comfortable with. Like if you travel and you find those different groups, then it's perfect. Like, you know, jobs that force you to travel, I've learned a lot from just different people. And
yeah, man. And there's the Team Rock Okinawa now, which means I got to go back and train at Team Rock Okinawa, you know, which I got to train with some of those guys. Some of those guys are out, you know, a lot of those are military guys, and a lot of those guys are in Jacksonville now. And so I got to train with some of them, and it was super cool to see like Team Rock Okinawa patches. I was like, damn, where was that when I was there? You know?
It was still just hanging out in North Carolina for a little bit. So, because I mean, what's funny too is like when I moved to Virginia. So, because I started at TFTC, which you know was pretty much like Team Rock Andrew at that point.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, shit, I'm gonna join the Army and I'm gonna move away. You know, fast forward years later, and I'm up in Northern Virginia, and Lamont comes in. Like, were you in Team Rock in North Carolina? He's like, yeah, who were you with? I was like, oh, I was with Brian Mingy and Neil Weaver. And he's like, oh, shit. Like, I actually had a picture. I pulled up my Facebook on my phone. I'm like, that's you. See, I was here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love hearing the old school stories, especially because TFTC is doing so well now. They have another location. It's really nice. Like, you know, there's a lot of folks that train there now. They got a lot of really good people. So
Yeah.
so it's cool to see that growth.
It's like every time I go in there, like, you know, it's Brian and Neil, like it's always good to see them. So now like they have Brad, who was on the show recently, and
Oh, awesome.
always good to talk to him. Then Mark Jihad, who I actually was in high school with for a little bit, and yeah, it's weird, but it's cool to see because like they expanded. And I remember training in the third floor of Brian's house because the original what TFTC used to stand for was third floor tactical concepts. And
That's awesome.
I have a picture of me getting my ass beat in his attic, pretty much, because it was on the third floor of his house. And then, you know, I remember we were painting the new school. And he's like, all right, let's take a break from painting and train. And we sparred Muay Thai, and he knocked me out. And then I got back up, and we just kept painting. So it was like the weird fun days of like, and he was a brown belt at the time. So like, holy fuck, you know, everybody talks about the blue belt that can run an academy. They got a brown belt in here. Oh shit, this is awesome. But now the two schools, like, they're killing it, man. I love seeing it. I'm always happy to see them doing well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just good for the rest of the scene, right? Like I think a lot of times, you know, a lot of the beef that happens in martial arts circles, I think, is based on a false notion. Like, I think people think that the martial arts pie is limited. That, like, okay, if you open a school, you might steal my students. And, you know, stuff like that happens. Like, there is student poaching, and that's real, and I don't want to discount that. But I think that we'd all be a lot happier if folks concentrated on expanding the pie and getting more people interested. Because if you look at, like, and I'm sure this is true when you were training, like like I said, when I started training, there was between 10 and 15 regulars, maybe like 8 to 10 guys that were really there training. And now, I mean, I'm not even going to guess, but like my school, I think we have like between 70 and 90 regular people. Yeah. And so much that we've had to move academies twice. TFTC went from, you know, when you were training, now they have 2 big schools, and, you know, Forged has 2 locations now, and it's great. And you know, and certainly there's going to be market saturation at some point, and so I don't want to discount that. But I think that, I mean, this is sort of how I see my own role and the role of the podcast, right? Is that I'm a big community-minded guy, and I think that it's to nobody's benefit if we hide information from each other. And it's to nobody's benefit if we try and shit on each other and be like, oh, those guys over there sucked. Oh, those guys, no, you should come train with us. Like, one of my really good friends, Tim Hufford, is a purple belt at Chapel Hill. And so we're sort of in similar roles at our schools, right? Where we have black belt instructors, Mazi Haydari, awesome instructor, great guy. And Seth Shamp, my instructor, obviously loved Seth, would run through a flaming wall for him. And so me and Tim are like the purple belts that are sort of like almost like the dudes, I don't want to say ambassadors, but like we're the dudes that are the purple belts that a lot of people know, from the schools. And both Tim and I send people to each other's schools all the time. Like, as in, people ask us, like, what's the difference? Why should I train here as regards there? And both me and Tim will be like, no, those guys are awesome. And if it's more convenient for you, and like, you know, and so it's, and, you know, I don't mean to just single out Chapel Hill as an example. It's just because, like, a lot of people that live on the Durham Chapel Hill border and are like, okay, should I drive 15 minutes this way or should I drive 15 minutes that way? Yeah. But I would do that for every school, right? Like, there's so many good, legit schools in the area. We haven't talked about Pendergrass Academy, which is a great Gustavo Machado school. We talked about Elevate MMA, which is Cody Malte's new school, Robert Drysdale black belt. And so all of these are folks that are totally legit, that are, I feel, super comfortable saying, like, yeah, you should go learn from Jason Culbreth, learn how to punch people in the throat. Or, you know, you should go learn from, you know, Brad Acosta, who's, you know, one of the coolest dudes in local jiu-jitsu. And so yeah, so like, I think that the notion that there's a limited slate of students, I think, is wrong. I think that if we were more focused on bringing more white belts in, because not everybody's going to stick with it, right? Like, no, just like our square dancing, face punching podcast wouldn't be for everybody. Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu are not for everyone, and that's fine. Sometimes it's cool if you, like, you have your pyramid, right, where like 10 white belts come in, one of those becomes a blue belt, you know, 10 blue belts, one of those becomes a purple belt. And you know, I'm a lifer for this, so I'm in it for the long haul. But like, I think it's great if, like, there's a woman who's a school teacher who wants to learn to defend herself, and she trains for 2 years and gets a blue belt, gets some self-confidence, gets in good shape, has a lot of fun, you know, and it's like, okay, maybe this isn't for me in the long haul, but I'm glad I learned this. Or maybe there's a guy who's like, I've always been small. I really wanted, I never really figured out or maybe an overweight guy, right? Who's like, I never really figured out what my body could do. And shit, I did this and I love it. And now I'm going to tell a bunch of my friends, and they're going to come and they're going to love it too. Because, martial arts are addictive, and it's a good addiction. It's an addiction that's healthy for you. And so I've rambled on a little bit, but my major point is just the pie can expand. There's a big part of what we're trying to do with the Concussion Cast and this carnival event we're having next week is to just sort of introduce people that don't train to training and sort of show them like the benefits of training for their lives.
Yeah, and I'm actually really jealous that you guys had it on like the 1 month that I'm here, and then was there, and then you guys had to do it on May 1st. But that's okay.
I'm so sorry, dude. We really wish. Yeah, and that's the other thing is there's more jiu-jitsu events than ever before, so the weekends get snapped up soon.
Yeah, it was never like that. It was like the Pendergrass tournament is happening. And the next term after that, it's like 7 months away. So start practicing.
Or you could drive 400 miles and compete in Atlanta or whatever.
The broke college student. I'm like, okay, we'll do the Pendergrass tournament then. But no, you're right about the pie. I mean, that's what kind of kills me. Honestly, it's going to take a lot for the market to be saturated. Like, it's going to take an extravagant amount, honestly, I think, for not just like jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai. I'd say like all martial arts. If they all just like got together and, it would take a lot of schools just oversaturate the market. And honestly, too, there's not like the schools with the people who teach that are just like, well, this is a quick way to make some money, or I have no game plan, or I just, I have no idea what I'm doing. Obviously, they're not gonna stick around long. But the ones that have quality, have instructors that give a shit about their students, they're the ones that are going to stay. And if it's a difference between driving 10 minutes one way and 10 minutes the other, is anybody really losing? I kind of look at like podcast. Like, honestly, not the majority of my guests, but I've had a lot of guys from like other podcasts, like you, Trevor, the guys from Jiu-Jitsu After Dark, just a few others. Like, what's the point? I've never had podcast beef with anybody yet. Well, let me take that back.
Maybe we should start one. Maybe we should like
bum
rush inside BJJ and like Dojo Storm. Dojo Storm the BJJ brick. I listened to all these podcasts, by the way.
I did. I feel bad because I did say one thing on the Kurt Osiander interview about BJJ brick, and somebody pointed out, it's like, well, BJJ brick like later read an article from your webpage. I was like, oh shit.
Those dudes are really nice.
Yeah,
those dudes are really nice guys, and like. And to get back to your comparison, I do think that martial arts gyms are like podcasts because different tastes for different folks, right? Like a couple of times, for whatever reason, we had dudes at our gym that just didn't fit in. There was a personality clash. They didn't like the feel of our gym. We went to a different gym. Or there was a couple of dudes that I don't want to say any names, but like a couple of dudes were training at a local gym. There was a beef with the instructor. And the instructor talked to my instructor, and there's a lot of mutual respect there. And they were both like, okay, this guy doesn't fit in here. I believe in second chances. Do you want to take him on? And he ended up coming over and training with us. And like, so just like if somebody listens to the Concussion Cast and is, annoyed by me, or I don't know how anyone could be annoyed by Trevor, but whatever, and decides they want to listen to a different podcast instead, I mean, that's totally cool. There are many paths to the way. And so, and it's not like this is a finite resource. So anyway.
Yeah, it's not like you're paying money to listen to one podcast. Like, we're doing this for free, ladies and gentlemen. Like, it's not like, but also go to bigjujitsu.com, buy a t-shirt. But so.
I gotta get me a big jiu-jitsu t-shirt. I'll do that right at the end of the show.
Oh my god, I'm so fortunate. I should just like almost hold my guests hostage and be like, buy a t-shirt or.
But I'm little, so can I really wear a big jiu-jitsu podcast if I'm a light featherweight?
Man, so I actually get that question a lot.
And, my God.
I feel bad, kind of, not like, was the intent originally going to be have just nothing but big people? I was like, yeah, kind of, but at the same time, I was like, fuck, man, but there's so many other good people we want to talk to. So it turned into not just big physically, but like big like spiritually and big like presence, or your heart, you got a big heart, but it just happened to have a Sasquatch on there. So I feel bad in like one way because we actually do have a lot of small, medium, and I think we're almost near the end of our larges. But there are people like, how the hell are you guys called Big Jiu-Jitsu? You don't have like a 4XL t-shirt. I'm like, oh, fuck, I completely forgot about that shit. And it wasn't
just buy two 2XLs, stitch them together.
Yeah,
it's
man.
fine.
Like, come on. Like, I feel bad too because like when you get to the 2XL, you got to add like $1.50 to it because I'm like, fuck. Like, but I guess in the next run I'm gonna have to throw a few in there, and that's okay because our listeners are cool people. But it's just, yeah, I feel so bad, man. But yeah, it's
we have concussion cast shirts, but I didn't and it was funny. Boomer, who from Cageside MMA and Toro BJJ, offered to make the shirts for me, and he was like, "What sizing do you want?" I'm like, because as a little dude, basically everyone over 170 looks the same to me.
Yep.
I'm the worst at judging weights. I'm absolutely the worst. Like, I rolled with the dude one day, and they were like, "Why did you roll with that big dude?" I was like, "Oh, come on, he's like 190." They were like, "That dude is 270." And I'm like, "Really?" and like legitimately, I couldn't tell the difference. It's like once you get past that diminishing return, it's like it's fine.
Was he like, "Oh, you're so nice, thank you very much"? It wasn't.
Yeah, no, it's weird because sometimes they love it, sometimes they really don't. Like sometimes I'm like, "Your pressure's really good, bro." It's like, "Well, it should be. I weigh you by 120 pounds." I'm like, "I'm sorry."
So, they're big guys with shitty pressure, so calm down. Don't get insulted.
That is true. Like we had one dude that I used to train with who was 363. I mean, he ranged between 310 and 360, and I felt like, yeah, right. He would talk about Sasquatch, and I felt like an ant running between the tracks of his boot. Because I was like, man, you should be crushing me right now. Although I can't move really, I don't feel as smashed as when, say, Roy Marsh grabs that muscle in the side of my neck.
Yeah,
makes
that was
me
a good
hate
video.
life forever. Yeah, right.
Good video.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Roy always chooses the most painful techniques to demonstrate on me, and I'm not even making this up. One time, so Roy has done 3 videos with me that have been just awful. The side control pressure video, which is like, oh, I'm going to smash your face and grab the muscle in your neck. The guillotine video, where I was coughing for 2 days after that, and this Ezekiel choke video, which we shot from like 5 different angles, and it's like, I'm making all these horrible sounds. And while Roy is doing this stuff on me, Roy Marsh, plays Gracie Black Belt, great guy, super technical instructor. He's like, the thing is, Jeff, if you're going to do this technique on somebody and demonstrate and use them as your uke, you have to either really like them or really hate them. And I'm like, I'm really hoping it's the first one, Roy, but I'm not sure if it really matters.
Well, he was on your show, so I'm taking it as he really liked you.
I hope so. But like, we'll find out when we roll next.
Oh shit, man. Yeah. But so before we end the podcast, Jeff, is there anybody? Well, first of all, tell us where we can find you and Trevor, and give a little plugs for the stuff you're doing.
Thank you so much, Rob. First of all, thanks so much for having us on the show. Really love your podcast, and so it's awesome to be on it. You can find me and Trevor at whupfm.org. That's whoopfm.org, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Cageside Radio. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud if you just search for the Cageside Concussioncast. The big thing that we're doing May 1st is we're having the Concussioncast Carnival, which is our first live event. We're having 10 jiu-jitsu super fights featuring your friend and mine, Brad Acosta, in one of those matches, a bunch of other awesome people. We're going to have 2 free seminars, one a free self-defense seminar, one a free worm guard seminar. That's in downtown Durham, North Carolina. So if you're local, please come out. It's May 1st, noon to 3. If you're not local, we'll be streaming the fights on Cageside on facebook.com/Cageside Radio. So that's the big stuff that we have going on. And would you mind if I gave some shout outs to my homies?
Nah, please do, man.
Awesome. First of all, always big thanks to my instructor, Seth Champ, hoist Gracie Black Belt. He's the greatest instructor a dude could ask for. To Boomer, James Boomer Hogaboom from Cageside MMA and Toro BJJ. Boomer lets me design gear for Toro BJJ, and it's super fun, and he does a lot of great stuff for the community. Cageside is a new location, so for all your MMA gear, check those guys out at cageside.com. I also want to thank Roy Marsh, who is seriously one of the best instructors that I've worked with. And it's super awesome of him to film videos for us, even though he smashes my face and crushes my trachea when he does it. Small price to pay. But seriously, if you ever have a chance to take a seminar or a private from Roy, you should definitely do it. And finally, I want to congratulate my teammate, Kim Rice, for winning silver at Abu Dhabi. She is a boss. Go, Kimbo.
Nice. Well, thanks. Like, Jeff, I really do appreciate you spending you drove all the way from Boston to North Carolina, and then jumped on and did an almost hour show with us, so I'm very appreciative of you coming on the show.
Oh, thanks, man. I'd love it. I had a lot of fun. I'd love to come back anytime.
Well, it's always open, so we're running through co-hosts these days. It seems like we're on our third. So, but yeah, we'll definitely hit you up again and maybe do another cross promotion type thing, possibly. But we can figure it out.
I'd love it. And when Roy's in Germany, you can get him on the show. So awesome.
I will kidnap him and bring him on the show, or actually more like ask him politely so he doesn't kill me to be on the show.
Exactly.
Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Big Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, a member of the Pod Bros Podcast Network. Go to podbros.com. Find yourself an entertaining podcast besides the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. Support them. They do a lot of work, but, it's always the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. We're the winners here, right? And don't forget to go to bigjujitsu.com, buy a t-shirt, buy a patch. Even click on the Amazon banner if you're going to buy something weird. I'm not going to look at your cart, so don't worry. I'm not going to judge you for buying fuzzy handcuffs or, 5-gallon drum of mayonnaise or whatever it is that you guys buy on Amazon. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigjujitsu, on our Twitter, @bigjujitsu, Instagram, bigjujitsu, and then don't forget to rate us on iTunes. I'm Rob the Lord Humongous, and we'll catch you all next time.